breath and enjoy the fact that we did it. We got here. So just sit into that. Yeah, it's been a busy week, I'm sure. So thank you for being here today, because with your presence, we truly can have a community of worship. So I'm trying something new, as was, I was seminary, so they like to challenge us, which is to write down a sermon. And I very much like to do sermons extemporaneously. But for today, if you will humor me, I'd like to try an experiment and see how this works. So a few years ago, I was deployed in what we call the sandpit. And I was Petty Officer Lorraine and served as an electrician, an aviation electrician's mate. And as my wife has heard me say far too often, I pray that I'm a better chaplain than I ever was an electrician. But this particular day that comes to mind, we had a sense of pride. There was a sense of mission and a sense of call. And our mission was to take down a top ISIS terrorist who was known for the mass destruction of children, using the P-3 aircraft, which I was assigned to work on. And as an electrician, part of our job was not only to fix the plane, but also to launch the planes as well. And it was not until I came to seminary that it hit me. I launched the plane that took a man's life. I began to think about his friends, and his wife, and his children. I may never get to meet them in this life, but my simple hand gestures led to a bigger mission that would forever change their world. And in my heart, I carry a duality of knowing that there are children who will grow to adulthood because this man no longer is alive, and that there is blood on my hands. This story is far too common to many of our veterans who share in the same themes as my story. And comparatively, I have it easy. I have sat and talked with a 19-year-old who is a functioning alcoholic who uses alcohol to numb and to get through the day and the pain that he feels. And I have sat beside many soldiers and listened as they tell their stories of what they have seen in deployments. I have sat with many who feel guilty for not having been deployed. And I also sit with those who feel guilty for not being asked to give as much as others for our country. And I'm not here this morning to argue the pros and the cons of war. I'm not here to convince you of a certain political stance. I stand before you and beg you to listen to the backstories of those who serve. If we listen closely to the scriptures we read, that were read this morning, we might have the privilege of actually hearing the backstories of some of these main characters. The woman who gave all she had. I find myself asking, what was going on in her life? Was she giving away the last 2 copper coins because even when she had nothing, God had given her everything? Could it be possible that this humble servant never realized that Jesus was watching her, and that her devotion to God would be immortalized in the Bible? She just went about her own life, making no pretenses, but ready and willing to sacrifice. We always have an option. What happened in her life that she chose to give possibly everything she had in sacrifice? Then, of course, there is sweet, lovely Naomi. Or is she? Perhaps Naomi sought security for Ruth because Naomi herself knows what a life without security feels like. She did not wish to the same life struggle on her beloved Ruth. I heard it expressed in class this week, in an Old Testament class, that Naomi is a beautiful character who just enjoys making everyone happy and finds joy in just being the side character in Ruth's story. And as you can imagine, my stomach turned hearing this. If seminary has taught me anything, it is that just because you are a scholar, it does not mean that you know anything. There's a difference. And I would love to give you a point-by-point breakdown of all the implications of Ruth and Naomi, but you don't have the time, neither do I. So for this sake of this sermon, I'm just going to focus in on one point. Dr. Nancy Wilson invites us to look at this story as a love affair. While their dynamic is to be one of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, we have no proof of this family structure through records. Dr. Wilson challenges my own understanding and invites me to see Ruth and Naomi as being in love. Not too long ago, we lived in a society that truly believed she is my roommate, which now raises an eyebrow to anyone in the LGBTQ community. Oftentimes, the vows exchanged between Ruth and Naomi in chapter 1, verses 16 through 17, are exchanged as wedding vows. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. There will I be buried. Is it possible that Naomi and Ruth clung to each other, disguised as mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, so they would be protected from the societal standards and norms of the day? The truth is, we will never really know. These backstories help paint for us what we think we know about someone and invite us to actually have a conversation with Naomi and Ruth and with the woman and the 2 copper coins. As our culture has shown us, the one who talks the loudest is the winner. We've all heard the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I, for one, am so grateful for the voices who have stood up for the voice of change. We stand on the shoulders of giants who have come before us, and I myself reap the benefits of their efforts again and again, and I am truly grateful. However, today's sermon is about the power of being a just peace church and the power of listening. As a seminary student, I would love to say the one thing that you need to hear today. I would love to preach the sermon that covers every part of our ecumenical mission and goals, and I would love for you to leave here today with a song in your heart, "Oh, what a friend I have in Jesus." And that may happen, and it may not, and that's okay. But if you leave here today feeling God's love for you and your backstories, and somehow empowered to do the work of God here on earth through breaking your own assumptions and hear the backstories, and that is fantastic. This coming Wednesday is Veterans Day. For those who are somewhat perplexed by Memorial Day and Veterans Day, please allow me to explain. Memorial Day is the day that we honor those who have served and who are no longer with us on this earth. And Veterans Day is the day we remember all who served in our armed forces. The Army, the Coast Guard, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, and the Navy. I ask you to take a moment and ponder in your own mind what your assumptions are about sailors, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, Marines, and soldiers. 22 veterans commit suicide every day in our country. 22 a day. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a familiar friend to the majority of veterans, but not all. And again, I repeat, not all veterans have PTSD. Moral injury is a newer development and is different from PTSD. Suffering moral injury is not fear-based, as PTSD is. It is when someone has crossed their own lines of morality. An example given by Susan Brock is of a father who, while deployed, had to make the decision to kill a child who was strapped with bombs in order to save 19 men to go home to their families. When he returned home, he was disconnected from his own children because of what he had to do in the time of war. This is where a Just Peace Church can help. It is in moral injury that providing a safe space to talk when the service member is ready, and the open ears and the hearts to hear the backstory of the morally injured is cured. This particular father, with the help of his church, began an outreach mission to an orphanage. This is the power of our church community to help veterans. The church and the military are both communities who want to serve. And it is because of those who fought that we have religious freedom. And as a service member, I hold this dear to my heart. Oftentimes I'm asked, how can you be a minister to a culture that's so inherently violent? These comments are usually made by somebody who has never served in the armed forces. This is their assumption. My perspective the day I launched the plane was never the glorification of taking life. I have yet to meet one military member who glorifies in taking life. My focus was on saving the children, so that maybe one day they could grow up and be the peacekeepers that this world so desperately needs. I am proud to serve in the U.S. Navy. I am proud of my wife, who serves in the U.S. Army. I am so proud that the Navy beats the Army in every football game. And as she would aptly say, well, the Navy has to be good at something. I am proud of my father, who served in the Coast Guard, my uncle, who was a Marine Corps pilot, and my grandfather, who was a foot soldier in Germany. Who in your life was called upon to give everything on behalf of our country and our freedom? Could it be that we do not know the whole story? This is why I am a chaplain. I want to hear these stories. I want to hear them. Not everyone is ready to talk now, but some might be. And my challenge to you this morning is, when the time comes, are you willing to hear the backstories? You may never know it, but in one conversation, you may have the power